Hi everybody, Jeremy here from Video Editor Studio, and today I'm going to share with you how to use the text plus title in Davinci Resolve and how to understand all the parameters that are contained within this title. So let's check it out. Alright, so in Davinci Resolve right now we're on the edit page, and you can find the text plus title by going over to effect, then down to title, and here you will have the text plus titles. You can just take it and drag it directly in your timeline. This title by default doesn't have any animation. It's available both for the free version of Davinci Resolve as well as the paid version, and basically it will be your starting point whenever you want to make your custom text. You have access to it also in the Fusion page where you can do modification as well. You can just bring text plus, and here you will have more control over your animation when you keyframe things. But for the time being, let's go back to the edit page. In this video, I'm gonna explain you all the parameters available in the text plus so you can make all the customization that you want to your title. So here in your inspector, you have a couple of things. You have two tabs, the title and the settings. The settings will control basically the entire composition. So that will control the size, the position, and some cropping, some dynamic zoom if you want to add some dynamic zoom, but that's the same thing that you have on any other clip. It controls the entire composition. Here in title, as you can see, you have a couple of tabs. You have text, layout, transform, shading, and each of those contain a bunch of parameters that allow you to change different things on your text. So first off, here in text, you can change here the text itself, so you can replace it for Davinci Resolve, for example. Here you can change the font, so you can select any font that is installed on your computer. Here we're gonna go with Montserrat, and then the second drop down here is where you're gonna be able to select if you want something light, bold, medium, etc., depending on the font that you've selected. Then you can change the color. You can just click right here on the color and then select whatever color you want. You have a color wheel right here. You have here your RGB slider, and then you have a couple of color pre-selected, the basic ones. So here, for example, we can select red, click OK, and here we go. We got a new color for our text. You can also here use this color picker to select whatever color is on your screen. So here I'm just gonna click on it, and then you can select, for example, this beige color and OK, and that will be on your color. Then you can adjust the size of your text. You can adjust the tracking, which is basically the space between the letters. So here, if we increase it, as you can see now, we have more space in between the letter, or we can reduce that space to the minimum until, for example, they all match together. So right now, I'm just gonna leave it like that. Then if you have multiple lines, so here, if I were to add a bit more text, we could use line spacing, which basically gonna increase the space between the lines. And then we have the anchor. So we have V anchor, which are vertical anchor, and then H anchor, which are horizontal anchor. So basically here, if I were to start with H anchor, you can anchor your text to the left. So that means that now everything is aligned to the left. And if I were to add some text right there, as you can see, now my text is not pushed back, it stay in place, and it enables you to keep your layout when you have multiple line of text. If we were to have a center one, as you can see, if I recenter it right here and I were to reduce some text, there is some movement and everything is pushed back. Sometimes that's something that you may want. Sometimes you may want to have everything aligned when you have a paragraph, for example. So that enables you to do that. You can have it also on the right side right here, which will basically do the exact same thing, but on the right side. And you have the exact same option here for vertical. So you can have it basically done at the bottom, center, or at the top. If you want to reset any parameter at some point, you can do that very easily by just selecting the parameter that you want to set back to default, and you can just double click on it here for tracking, for example, and it will reset the value to the original one. Same here for size. As you can see here, that will be our original point. I can just double click on it and it will reset the text to the default parameter. Now I'm just gonna delete all those, and I'm gonna just recenter and reset everything back to where it was. So now I've just reset everything. Another thing to note is that here by default, it will be in transform, and you will not see the icon that enable you to move around the text on your screen. So you can just go down there and select Fusion Overlay, and now you're able to just move the text around as you want. If you go down here in direction, you have also the possibility to either leave it in automatic, will be just horizontal text, then you can select horizontal, which is the exact same thing, reversed horizontal, which basically is reversing your text, and then you can select vertical. So now you'll have your entire text being vertical, and when you'll add some text, as you can see, it will be added vertically instead of horizontally. You can also reverse it vertically if that's something that you want to do, but right now I'm gonna go back to automatic. Now here in line direction, you can leave it in automatic. There is no really a point of using that, but top down is basically here, the text will be above this point, and here bottom up will be basically the reverse. It will be center on that point. You can also use here emphasis, so you can toggle here strikeout, which will basically cross your entire text, and you can as well here use underline to underline your text. Another parameter here is write on. So basically, as you can see here, if I were to move this slider, it will remove the text and here write the text on. So as the name stated, it's gonna write your text on if you animate it. So here you could start, for an example, from 0 and then drag it up to 1 to reveal the entire text. So that's something usually that you can use being keyframed. By the way, you can keyframe any of those parameters by just clicking here on any of those squares to leave a keyframe. So for example, I could just go here to frame 0, bring the write on down to 0, add a keyframe, and then go to the end of the text and bring the write on to 1. And now I will have basically a write on animation. I've keyframed. As you can see now, it's moving towards the second value. I have an entire video on keyframing if you want to learn more about it. That's something that you will do most often in Fusion, but you can do it as well here on the edit page. It's just you have less control over it and over the look of your animation. For type spacing and advanced control, don't worry about it if you're just getting started. Then you can go over to layout, and here you have a couple of interesting things. You can just here select different types. You have point, you have frame, circle, path. For example, here circle, your text will be just on some sort of invisible circle all around. So if you were to add some text, everything will be just around that circle. Here you could also select path, which basically the text gonna follow the path that you draw. So here you can add one point and then another point and then another point. You can just have your text basically following the shape that you're creating. If you want to delete any of those points or curve them, so here you have those little handle if you want to add some curve to the shape that you're creating, and you can just select the point and delete it to basically delete your point and go back to the original shape if you're not happy with what you've created. So here you get the center, which basically, as you can see, the value can change when you move it around like that, but you can do it also directly from the inspector by moving it from there. Right now I'm just gonna double click on it to reset it. Center Z is similar to the size. Basically, as you can see, it just increased the size of your text. Then size, exact same thing. Then you got perspective. Right now you're not gonna be able to see anything if I were to use it like that, because we didn't twist the perspective with the rotation. But for example, here the second one is rotation, so you can add some rotation to your text on different axes right here. And if we were to increase the perspective, as you can see, it will just increase the perspective. I'm just gonna double click on everything to reset my text. And then here you got background. So by default, your text will be on a transparent background, which means that if I were to bring here in my timeline another clip to put beneath the text, as you can see now, we have some transparency and the text is above the clip. But if you want to add, for example, some color, or if you want to add a black background, you can do that here with the background. So first off, you will need to activate completely your alpha channel, right now it's at 0. If you want to have a solid color, you can bring it to 1, and now you can change to whatever color you want, and you will have a solid background behind your text. But for example, here, if you would just like to make your text pop, we could go back to having something black and bring the alpha down to have just a tiny bit of black in front of the clip to make the text pop a little bit more. Right now I'm just gonna bring back the alpha to 0 and delete that clip. Now we can move to transform, and here in transform you have a drop down that allow you to choose how is gonna affect your text. So you can choose the character, word and line. Basically here, for example, spacing will be similar to what we got here, which is called tracking, where we have basically space between the letter. I'm just gonna reset that, but if we go back to transform, as you can see here, spacing do the exact same thing, but we are in character mode, which basically means that it's going to increase the space between each letter. But if we were to here select word and we increase space, it will increase the space between two words. And same thing here, if we have different lines. So if I were to add more line to my text, and then I'm going here back to transform line, and I'm increase the space, it will increase the space between two lines. The pivot X and pivot Z will not do anything if you didn't make modification here in rotation, shear, or size. I'm just gonna show that later on. So here, rotation, you can make a rotation on the X, on the Y, and on the Z axis. So here I have character selected, so it affecting all the character. But again, if I were to select to reset everything right here and to select word instead, then if I make modification here to the Y rotation, as you can see, it's affecting the word, and it will be the exact same thing for the lines. And this principle will be the same here for the shear and for the size. So now I'm just gonna reset everything and select character again. Then here you can make modification to the shear X or the shear Y. You can make modification to the size. So here that will be the width, and here that will be the height. So now let's move on to the shading tab. So right here, that's where you're gonna continue to adjust the look of your text. So here we got shading element. Basically, you enable different layer of text adjustment. So right now we just have the first one enabled. If I were to move to the second one, as you can see, it's not enabled. This one is named by default red outline. If I were to enable it, as you can see, it just add a red outline around my text. And now I have another independent layer that I can control to add some customization to my text. If I were to remove it, as you can see, now there is just that outline that is removed. So now I'm going back just to the first one to show you what you can do. But basically you can combine all those things to create different layer within your text. So right here in property, you got opacity. So if you were to reduce the opacity slider, as you can see now, the opacity is fading out. If I add a clip again below it, if I'm bringing a clip in my timeline, as you can see, now we're not seeing it pretty much on screen. And if I add more of it, now we can see it on screen. So here you get your blending mode. I will just leave it in solid. And here you can choose between different appearances. So you got basically filled. So your entire text right now is filled with one color. You could have an outline. So now the fill disappeared. The fill is transparent and you have just the outline of the text. And if you were to select outside only, now it will be only on the outside of the text. So if you increase the thickness of it, it will not take space within the text, if that makes any sense. Then you can select here the join style, which basically gonna, as you can see right here, show you how the corner of your text gonna behave. So you can have just like those kind of corner, those kind of corner, and those kind of corner. I don't know really what to say about it, but if we were to zoom, for example, at 200% in it, you're gonna see right now, if I were to increase it by a lot, how it affects the text. So I'm gonna increase even more the zoom. As you can see here, if I switch in between those, you're gonna get those angles. So basically you can choose from a straight angle, a round angle, or that kind of angle here, where you have like another extra corner. You could also here choose the style of the line. So right now it's a solid line. We could have here some dash. So here I'm just gonna reduce a bit the thickness for those ones, because that's not gonna work if you have something that is too thick. And you can have dots, a combination of dash and dots, and here basically dash and two dots. But for those ones, again, I will recommend here to reduce the thickness to the minimum, because if you increase it too much, it doesn't really look like anything. So now I'm just gonna go back to a fill view and to a fit viewer. And right there, I can change the color as I show you. You can do it also from here. You get the choice to choose from solid, image, and gradient. And here we could add, for example, a gradient. You could pick a couple of color. I have another tutorial on gradient that I will link in the description below. But here, basically, you can choose the color of one point of the gradient. So I'm gonna choose, for example, a red, and then another point of the gradient right there. And I'm gonna select, for example, purple. Then you can choose the mapping angle, which basically gonna make your gradient rotate here, or the mapping size. So here you will increase basically the split between the color, or reduce the split between the color, and you're gonna have basically more of the two color if you go down in the mapping size, and you're gonna have basically a merge of the two color if you raise the mapping size. And here the mapping aspect will adjust the feathering between the two colors. So if I were to bring it down completely, as you can see now, you can see the gradient as too solid, but if I were to increase it to the maximum, now we got basically a merge between those two colors, and we almost don't have a gradient, but more a mix of the two colors that we picked. You can also choose here the mapping level, either on the character. So here, if I bring down the mapping aspect, as you can see, the gradient is affecting each letter individually. We could here select either character, word, so the gradient will affect only the word, only the line if I had multiple line, or here if you were to select text or full image, it will be the entire text within the screen. So right now I'm just gonna bring it back to solid. So now you have another type here, you got image, so you could bring here a picture within your text instead. So to do that, I'm just gonna here go back to text, reduce Davinci and increase the size so we can see a bit better. Here I'm gonna go back to shading. Now there's another type here, you can select image and it will bring here image source. You can just select clip, color file, and here you can browse, search for the image that you would like to bring, and it will be in your text right here. You can select again, either if you want that on all character, if you want to have it on word, if you want to have it on line, text, full image, etc, etc. So here we're going to select full image. Unfortunately, as you can see now, it's not fitting the format of the frame, so I will need to have something that is on a format of 1080p or 4K, so we have, you know, the exact same aspect ratio, which is not the case of this image, but basically just take a 1080p image and you will be fine. And then here you can adjust again, same thing, the mapping aspect, which will basically increase here the size of my image vertically, which basically gonna increase the size of my image vertically and make it fit the frame a bit better. And then here I could reduce the mapping size so the image is fitting a bit better within my text. You can adjust here also the mapping angle to have some rotation, but here you will get some deformation, for example. But anyway, that's something that you can do. Right now, I'm just gonna go back to solid. Now we have a couple of drop down. We got size, we got shear, we got rotation, position, and softness. So here, softness, you can add it on the width, you can add it on the height, and you can add some sort of glow to it, which will add a bit more like deformation. That's something that can be useful once keyframe to create an effect. And then here you can reduce that effect with the blending mode. So you could create, for example, like a certain look and then bring it to 50% if you want to have something that is a bit less strong. But those parameters can be something that is quite cool to create an animation effect, some sort of glitch or flashy text, for example. I'm just gonna reset everything to the original one. And now we're gonna go down here in position. Here, position, rotation, shear, and size, you can modify that from the other modules, so I'm not sure why it is here as a duplicate, but basically it's the same thing that we saw. You can adjust here the shear, you can adjust the rotation on different axes, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Going back here to shading element, I would like to share with you a couple of things. So if I were to bring here again a new clips behind it, and I don't have so much separation and I would like to add a drop shadow to my text, I could do that by just going here in shading 3, enable it, and here as you can see it's black shadow. I could adjust the opacity of that shadow, I could adjust the softness of the shadow, change the color, etc, etc. Here in 2 we got the red outline, so everything again is marked here with the name. So 2 is red outline, you can enable it and then you can make your modification right there. If you were to go to 4, there will be a blue border, so you'll have basically a background to your text. So if I were, for example, here to increase the text, to add Davinci or reduce stuff, so now as you can see this background is going along with the text. I'm gonna go back to shading. I'm gonna remove that. I'm gonna remove the red outline. As you can see here, you can see what is activated or not by the little star right there. And then 5th, 6, 7, 8, there is nothing. It's something that you can just custom yourself. So here, if you want to create, you know, another look on your own, that's something that you can do. So if you wanted to create a background, you could create it by using here border fill, and then we could extend horizontally, extend vertically. For example, we could change here, for example, from text to word, and then bring down the extended vertical, for example, and bring down the opacity, and we will have a background that where you can see through. I'm gonna change the color here just to black. And here you go, you got a background for your text that doesn't take the entire screen, for example. So there is a lot of different applications, a lot of different things that you can do. I'll let you play around with that. I just wanted to share with you all the parameters that were available within the text plus title, so you can create the text that you want and the custom text that you want. Again, as you can see, you can keyframe everything to create your own animations, but I would recommend to do that over in Fusion, because here you will have more control in the spline area to just smooth your keyframe, etc., or here in the keyframe panel to adjust all your keyframing. But anyway, I have more video about keyframing and animation on the channel. I'll let you check that out if you're interested. Thank you very much for watching, and have a nice day. Bye. Speed up your workflow and create better videos using the pack available on our website, including titles, transition, and templates, but only for Davinci Resolve. Get started today by downloading our free starter pack containing a compilation of 20 titles curated from our library. Link in the description below or at videoditastudio.com.